It strikes again and again. At -73, the cabin still stands sealed. He claws and bites without mercy. At -73, the door still holds.
In this frozen wilderness, even the strongest predator must move with caution. At -71.
In this frozen silence, the snow leopard becomes the land itself.
In this frozen land, time spares no one. At 90 years old, survival depends on wisdom, patience, and staying together. In this frozen forest, brute strength cuts a path forward. At -73, even hunger becomes a fight to survive. In this frozen forest, she walks alone by choice. At -73, awareness and discipline keep her alive. At 90 years old, they walk forward without fear. In this frozen forest, experience guides every step they take.
In the frozen forest, danger is rarely seen. At -71,
In this frozen forest, fear becomes fuel. At -73, running is not escape, it is survival.
In this frozen forest, instinct takes control. At -73,
When the snow leopard enters the forest, silence follows. At -73, stealth decides who lives unseen. When the lion enters the forest, borders disappear. At -73, even distant shelters are never truly safe.
In the frozen forest, fear finds shelter in numbers. 73s.
separated by land, united by instinct. At -73, every predator moves alone, guided only by survival. At the mountain's base, survival chooses the harder path. At -73, moving together becomes their strength. Separated by land, united by instinct. At -73, every predator moves alone, guided only by survival.
When stillness breaks, everything moves at once. At -73, mountain. Staying together is the only way forward.
They reach shelter at last. In this frozen land, even a wooden cabin feels like the final line between life and death.
From the frozen heights, the lion descends. At -73, speed is survival. Down the frozen slope, the boar drives forward. At -73, instinct allows no hesitation. Silent and precise, the snow leopard descends. At -73, mastery of the mountain decides survival.
Inside the cabin, they pause. At -73, even silence feels heavy, waiting to break. They follow the marks in the snow. At -73, the trail leads them closer, step by step.
Defense becomes the last plan.
inside the cabin, fear settles in. At -73, waiting can be harder than running. A sound breaks the silence. At -73, even a scratch can freeze the heart.
They strike the cabin from all what stands.
They claw and bite without mercy. At -73, the door stands unbroken.
It strikes again and again. At -73, the cabin still stands sealed. He claws and bites without mercy. At -73, the door still holds.
He tries with claw and tooth. At -73, the door still refuses to break.
It hits again and again. At -73, the door still stands firm.
The roar cuts through the cabin. At -73, fear becomes louder than the storm.
It crashes without mercy. At -73, the cabin still stands unbroken. From the frozen forest, the storm rises. At -73, nature becomes the final force.
The storm reaches them all. At -73, even predators bow to the cold.
It runs, but the storm is closer. At -73, even speed cannot escape the cold.
The storm storm is stronger than muscle. At -73, even power must struggle.
It runs, but the storm follow. At -73, nothing outruns the cold.
Nothing stands before it. At -73, the storm becomes the world.
Against the storm, even a king must run. At -73, survival allows no rest.
Inside the walls, fear breathes with them. At -73, safety is only a fragile hope.
When the storm decides, even giants fall. At -73, nothing stands forever.
Fear fills the silence. At -73, waiting can be more terrifying than running.